Well, good morning, and welcome to the 2026 Real Estate Forecast Breakfast hosted by the Birmingham Bloomfield Chamber. This is our third and final forecast breakfast of the year, so big check off for the Chamber staff for getting us through our first phase of major programming for the year, and we want to thank you for being with us this morning. Obviously, we have a full room, so if we can try to not be too disruptive, that'd be great. We've got some great speakers, and we're looking forward to the program. My name is Joe Ballman. I'm the President and CEO of the Chamber, so on behalf of the staff, our Board of Directors, and our ambassadors, thanks for coming this morning. For those of you who might not know a lot about the Chamber, so we have just south of 700 member businesses that we advocate for on a daily basis to make sure that you have every opportunity to be successful and grow your business. As I said, we have a staff of 4 people, 4.5 when we have an intern. I'd like to introduce them real quickly so you can see who is working every day hard to advocate on your behalf. So our operations manager is Kelly Bennett in the back. Kelly, check you in. Our marketing and events manager is Annie Burns. Annie is somewhere. Annie's over there. If you haven't met yet, we have a brand new, third weekend, I think, new membership engagement manager, Ellen Dufresne. We're very happy to have Ellen join the team. And we are joined by our intern from Oakland University for the spring semester as well, which is Esther Polis, and she'll be taking pictures of all of you and making you look fantastic. So thank you all very much. As I said, we're a staff of 4 with 700 member businesses and literally thousands of chamber reps, business reps that we work with and work on behalf of every day. We couldn't do all that we do without some amazing leadership, volunteer leadership, from our board of directors and our ambassadors. Our board of directors, like any board of directors of an association or corporation, as you know, they help guide the organization. They set policy, they hire and fire the CEO, and obviously are in charge of the budget. So we're so thankful to be led by an amazing group of individuals. So if you happen to be serving this year on the board of directors, please stand and be acknowledged. And then lastly, and certainly not least, as I mentioned, we have a group of about 20 members, volunteers who are ambassadors. These folks give of their time, their talent. They help us staff our events. They help do member visits, new member visits. They help with our care calls. Really, they're an extension of the staff, and we couldn't do everything that we do without them. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. And if you are an ambassador this year, please stand and be acknowledged. I also want to thank our sponsors for this morning's program. Again, our sponsors are member businesses that see value in investing in the Chamber to help us do programs like the Forecast Series and help guide us throughout the year. We would like to keep in mind that our sponsorships help us also try to keep the cost of our programming down, which all of you, I'm sure, know is not an easy thing to do in these times of escalating costs, but we really do appreciate and depend on the investment that we receive from our sponsors. Our sponsors for this morning's program include our Diamond sponsor, Clark Hill PLC, our Platinum sponsor, the Bank of Ann Arbor, Birmingham location. Our Gold sponsors include Fenner, Melstrom and Dooling PLC, Oswald Companies, Citizen State Bank, and Consumers Energy. Our Coffee Bar sponsors, the Birmingham Shopping District. Our stage sponsor is Rate, and our valet sponsor is Amaro Interior Design. So thank you to all of our sponsors. And then last but certainly not least, I want to acknowledge our legacy sponsors for 2026. Our legacy sponsors are a smaller group of Chamber member businesses that make a significant annual investment into the Chamber to help us with obviously our budgeting, our operations, but really importantly is because of the investment that these members make, we're able to provide a lot of programming for our members at either no cost or low cost. And we can do that because we use the revenue that we receive from our sponsorships to pay for those programs. So really, really critical part of the chamber operation. And our legacy sponsors for this year include Michigan United Credit Union, Bank of Ann Arbor, Fenner Melsom and Dooling, Comcast Business, Clark Hill PLC, Citizen State Bank, and North American Midway Entertainment. So thank you to all of our legacy sponsors. Okay. Next up is an introduction for probably in this room. Person needs no introduction. And that is our moderator this morning, Paul Magee. Paul has been a member at Clark Hill PLC since 2012. He represents owners, managers, tenants, and real estate professionals in transactional and litigation matters involving every aspect of commercial real estate. His mantra emphasizes understanding each client's business and developing cost-effective, creative solutions to vexing problems. I like that word, vexing. Paul, you must have come up with that yourself, right? So, Paul was chair of the International Council of Shopping Centers, Legal Advisory Council. He's a past Michigan State Director. He's chair for Michigan ICSC Continuing Education, Real Estate Education, and was awarded ICSC's Trustees Distinguished Service Award. He's past president of the Building Owners and Managers Association of Metro Detroit. He's a life member of the Judicial Conference of the U.S. Court of Appeals and is a frequent presenter at real estate conferences, including ours. Paul, do you know how many times you've moderated for us? Maybe 10. So we really appreciate all that Paul does for the Chamber. With that, Paul Magee.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think in the interest of time, even though I was going to practice a new stand-up routine, we may have to wait until next year. I'd really like to move things along, and we have some really outstanding speakers that we're going to hear from. So I'm going to do what my clients expect, which is exercise quality judgment and get kicked off right away with our speakers, and they will not disappoint you. If we do have time at the end, then hopefully we'll be able to also do some Q&A, but we'll leave that to be seen. Our first speaker this morning is going to speak to you about residential real estate matters, and our speaker is Dan Elsey. Dan is the president of Brokerage Services for Real Estate One family of companies. He and his brother Stuart share leadership and for the company and its affiliates. The company is nearly 100 years old, having started in 1929 by their grandfather, and now they're the fourth generation of leadership. Some real lessons to be learned about how to make that happen. Real Estate One is the largest and leading broker in Michigan with 83 offices and 2,500 sales associates, encompassing 7 brokerage brands: Real Estate One, Max Brook, Romerica, MBA, Preferred, West Edge, and Reinhardt. I'm sure we've heard of all of them, along with their affiliated mortgage, title, property, and casualty insurance and property management lines. Dan is, of course, active in the real estate industry, serving on a number of industry boards and committees. Together with his wife, Susan, they're longtime Troy residents. They have 2 daughters, 4 grandchildren. And to the extent he has time, his non-work activities include skiing, tennis, basketball, but you'll be surprised to know that he's one of the few people who has not yet gotten involved in pickleball. Dan, please come up and educate us on residential real estate.
I think by law, we all have to do pickleball by 65, so good to see you. Good to see you all. And Todd and I are going to give you a fire hose of great information. It's going to change your life. You're going to get great for those barbecues and those water cooler conversations. You're going to have great stuff to talk about. Maybe even on that romantic dinner that you might be having, where you got that lull, where you, between conversations, you can bring out some some slides on housing or on office rates, and it might be life-changing. Maybe not in a good way, but life-changing. So anyway, we'll give you some good information. Those of you who can see the slides, those of you that can't, I'll try to describe, and we'll send you these slides anyways for both presentations. So let's talk about real estate and the exciting things that are going on with residential real estate. So we'll start with, well, headlines maybe not so exciting. So if you can read that, most of the headlines that you read are not positive about residential real estate right now. And I put that up there just for the understanding for all of you. When you see those headlines, they're usually national and even regional. And the reality is real estate is very local, particularly in the market that we're in, which is the market that's changing direction. It was a very extreme seller's market, and we're shifting more to a balanced market. And that makes things messy and weird in that change. So you'll see things like there are a record number of buyers or listings over buyers that Redfin published recently. And that's relevant for California, for Texas, for Florida, for Nevada, but not for the Midwest and the Northeast. Our world that we're in is reacting to all of the issues that the rest of the world is reacting to in terms of interest rates and household incomes and all those things. But in the Midwest and in Southeast Michigan, we have the advantage of we're outperforming the rest of the country in that regard. We're not changing as fast or as hard. So when you see national headlines, even local headlines that generalize about all of Southeast Michigan, understand that you need to look at your local area, because what's happening in a market that's changing direction, all boats don't change at the same rate, don't move at the same rate. So what's happening in Birmingham is not necessarily the same as Milford or Clinton Township or downriver. So let's talk next exciting thing. Let's talk about affordability. And if you can see that chart, you can see that affordability was really great for a while and not so great now. So I'm 0 for 2 on exciting headlines here. But now Michigan has been historically a very affordable, probably the most affordable in the country. We have the highest homeownership rate in the country, used to for years at least. And if you were to layer this is Southeast Michigan. If you were to layer this chart against the rest of the country, even though homeownership or affordability has tanked since rates went up and values have popped over the last couple of years, we still are faring better than the rest of the country. But still, homeownership has changed, and we are in a world in Southeast Michigan that we have not seen in about 20 years, which is the median household income in Michigan can't afford the median priced home. And that's new to us. That's been true in San Francisco and California and other markets for a long time, but new to us. So home sales have shrunk because of that. There are fewer. The first-time home buyers used to be about 40% of the market. Now they're getting into the 20s, still rising a little bit. So if you take that first-time home buyer market and shrink it in half, sales are going to slow down. Now that little red circle there, which say that the headline is affordability relief, that little tiny circle is the relief. And in fact, it is true. Affordability is improving right now, has been for the last 6 months or so, and actually really for the last year or so. And the reason it's been improving is because finally household incomes are rising and value appreciation rates for homes are declining or flat. In our world, more flat. If you're in Florida, if you're in Texas, it's declining. But the reality is now there's a catch-up period, because there's a three-legged stool to affordability. It's interest rates, it's home values, and what's the third stool? Well, those two are the main ones. Yeah. Income, of course, household income. So household income, and since household income is going up and values are flattening and rates are stabilizing a little bit, then we're seeing some positive things for homeownership. So the outlook is a positive view as opposed to negative. So interest rates and what's going on with that, we all know about, and many of you have those sub 3% mortgages still, and that's probably been of the cement shoes that are keeping people in their homes the longest. That's probably universally across the country the biggest issue, and particularly for the baby boomer generation. we're sitting in our houses a lot longer. It isn't just interest rates. It's boomers are healthier, they're more active, they're working longer, so they're not changing their household positions. They're not selling that four-bedroom colonial and moving into the next stage of their lives as quickly. So it's piling up. The inventory isn't being released as quickly as we'd hoped it would be. But across the board, even for all generations, X, Y, Z, and boomers, we're still working through this. Now, the good news is that the low interest rates are rolling off. So if you can see from, it's 69% mortgages are below 5% now. In a year and a half, it'll be down to 59. So as that releases, that's going to release inventory because the cement shoes are going to break off a little bit. Unique to Michigan, there's another cement shoe, and that is real estate taxes and the markup jump up when you move for taxes. That's again, particularly the boomer generation, but holding those that have been sitting in homes for 10 or 15, 20 years. They're reluctant to move because of the tax issue as well. Tax issue isn't going away. That's at least at the moment, a consistent thing. But the low interest rates is rolling off, and it'll help release demand and release inventory. So mortgage rates feel, if you have that 2.5%, 3% mortgage, you've gone through that world, rates feel a lot higher than they are now. But in fact, most of you that have been in a home 10 or 15 years, you probably had a 6% mortgage when you bought the home. So it isn't that unusual. And right now, pre-war, rates were at a 3.5-year low, and it was starting to build some inventory and momentum. As the 3.5% mortgages roll off, people are willing to take the 6%. Right now, we have a little jump in the end there. And I don't think economists have got a lot of different views on where interest rates are going. I know the joke is economists have successfully predicted 9 of the last 7 recessions. So I think that, take it for a grain of salt where the world is going. But in our view, we think that since the financial markets seem to be predisposed to interest rates rising as opposed to falling, that any little thing will cause an excuse to raise rates. We think that the odds are rates will probably be rising over the balance of the year, a little bit, not a lot. And it won't be until 27 that we'll see that near 6% rates on the mortgage side of things. But the reality between a 6 and 6.3 and a 6.0 is not typically going to change someone's decision whether they buy or sell a house. But nonetheless, we think rates will be stable in that mid-6 range. So here's a view, if you all can see it, just of where Detroit sits and just a visual of Detroit and metro area versus the rest of the country. And in this chart, what it really compares to is those cities and what their for-sale inventory was like now compared to 2019, which is kind of the last normal year. And Detroit area is in the group that's in the upper left corner there, where inventories are significantly less. Detroit's about 30% less than it was in 2019. So lower inventories means supply is reduced, demand is still strong, so that our appreciation rates have also outpaced the rest of the country. And also it's a good visual of when you see a national statistic of rates are going X direction or inventory is changing in X direction, you can see the scale is pretty wide. So a national average means nothing, really. It's really depending on what's going on locally. So what's going on in Southeast Michigan? So home values, or number of homes sold for the first 3 months of this year versus last year, off about 5%. And that's actually not bad because in January they're off about 18% for a lot of factors, weather being a significant portion of it, but also just concern about the economy. It was pre-war, but still there was concerns about the world was going on. We were seeing buyers pulling back. And I'll say now that although there may be fewer buyers in the market, active in the market now, there have probably been this has probably have the most number of buyers in the market than I've ever seen in my 40 years in the business. Most of them are sitting on the fence watching. Most of them can't find the property they want to sell. They have their cement shoes of taxes and low interest rates, but they're willing buyers and willing sellers. So we have this massive buildup of interest in real estate. You have boomers, Gen X, Gen Y, and Gen Z, all in the next 5 years peaking in terms of their housing interests, whether it's boomers selling and moving out, first-time home buyers on the Gen Zs, X and Ys are the sale and move up, but all of them are reaching their peak activity level. So we have this massive fence with lots of birds sitting on it, and all waiting for something to happen. And at any given moment, there's a certain percentage of them that are active in the market, and that ebbs and flows with the economic flow. But that bodes well for housing for the next 10 years or more, because that demand will be released over time. So sales are off about 5%. Average sale price is up about 5%. The price per square foot, which we watch, was a little better indicator of appreciation, is up about 2%. So if you're going to ask in general for Southeast Michigan, what have values done year over year, probably closer to 2%. The 5% number, and you'll see that published a lot, because the number of high-end homes the first quarter this year was a lot higher than it was the first quarter last year. There are more high-end homes sold this year in Southeast Michigan. That drove up the average sale price. So it's masked the fact, but it's about a 2%. And that jumps from market to market. So in some markets, depreciation was 4 or 5%. Others, it was negative. If you have a upper-end home, $1 million home in outlying markets, Commerce, Milford, et cetera, you probably saw a decline in value. That same $1 million homes in Birmingham, Bloomfield, you probably saw an increase in value. So a $400,000 home in Brownstown Township, you probably saw a decline in value. $200,000 home, an increase in value. So there's a lot of back and forth even locally, but on average, values are up, but not a lot. The number of new listings on the market is actually declined so far this year, but the number of listings is up. So how does that happen? How can you have fewer new listings and yet the total available homes for sale going up? It's because sales have pulled back, and that's piling up inventory. So one of the things that we watch very closely is the number of homes that we show people. That's the leading indicator of where the sales are going. If we have lots of showings, we can anticipate lots of sales, or vice versa on the overall market. So we track that very closely. For overall market, which is the upper chart, you can see that sales have or showing activity has sort of struggled to keep up with the prior years. And that makes sense. Sales have slowed down, so you'd expect that to happen. The war announcement took about a week of slowdown of activity, and then it rolled right back up again. So now we're about at where we were last year in terms of the last couple of years in terms of showing activity. So the spring market is picking up and adding activity, so we're getting some good momentum. The lower chart there is the 750 and above, and that market is strong, has been strong year over year. It's the consistent number of showing activity, and therefore number of sales has been rising, and it makes sense. The economy that's been growing since COVID, all boats have been rising, all households have been rising, but the top 10% of households have disproportionately benefited economically from the rise. So that means that 750 and above market has disproportionately benefited as well. That market is less influenced by mortgages. There's more cash transactions there, and their household incomes are going up faster. So the net result is that the valuation flow, I'll show you the average sale price change by strata, but the upper end market is showing the most resilience and has for the last couple of years. So here's the change in inventory, the blue line, new listings, and then homes sold. And again, as I said before, the reason that inventory is rising is because sales have dropped back, so inventory is starting to pile up a little bit. So back in 2021, new listings, the properties that hadn't been on the market before constituted about 85 to 90% of all properties coming in the market. Now new listings that haven't been on the market are about a third of the market. So if you are looking for a home right now and you know that there are more homes on the market than there were before, Yet when you're looking, you're going to say, but haven't I seen this house before? Isn't this the same old inventory? And you're right, it kind of is. There are some new properties. And if you're looking, you have to understand that means that that home that pops on the market that is new to the market and it's updated and it looks great, you know there's going to be a whole bunch of people chasing that property. There's a whole bunch of people waiting to jump in. And because new construction has been constricted as well, we were at 19,000 permits in Michigan pre-COVID. We're now down to about 15,000. So those new home buyers are also looking at a home that was updated and looking at that as that's a new home opportunity. So you have not only used home buyers, but new home buyers all chasing those updated homes. So you get that activity burst that comes in those properties. So here's the price range strata for month supply of inventory. Now, month supply of inventory is a number we use internally, and that's to measure the velocity of the market. So anything, and what it means is for any number of homes on the market at any given moment, how long will it take to sell all those houses? What's the velocity? And if you're 3 months or less, that's a seller's market. That means constricted inventory, demand exceeds supply. 4 to 6 months is balanced, and over 6 months would be a buyer's market where supply exceeds demand. And by strata, you can see that the bottom numbers there is where the majority of the market is. The upper end market at 750 is a small sliver of the market. For Birmingham, Bloomfield, it's a big sliver, but for the metro area, it's a small sliver. So in general, the month supply of inventory is about 2.5 months. Now that's higher than it was before. It got down to under 2 months supply, which for Michigan is amazing. I mean, those are California numbers, but we're up to about 2.5 now. So that's still a seller's market. But it is less a seller's market than it was before, and it looks like it's going to be continuing to move up to probably the 3 months, maybe even more to a balanced market in the near future. And that's true for all price stratas. You can see the high end, the million plus, which is the red line, is a lot higher. It's about 7 months supply. But the high end market also, you can add maybe a couple months to that formula. So even the upper end market is still probably sitting in the balanced market, not necessarily, nothing's kicked over to a buyer's market just yet. So here's some other indicators of where the world is going, and you can dig into these when you get the charts if you're inclined to do so. But what these charts show you is the number of homes that are selling above list price and number of homes that are selling within 10 days. That's, again, the velocity of the market, where it's going. And probably the biggest thing about looking at these is that if you look, since it's comparing multiple months year over year, if you look at each of those month slivers, you can see that year over year, the number of homes selling within 10 days, the number of homes selling over asking price has been declining compared to the prior month. Again, it's showing that over the last 2 years, we've been a settling market. Still a buyer's market, but less and less and less. Price per square foot. And this is the visual that tells you that the upper end market has benefited most from the rising economy. That's that red line at the top. You can see the average price per square foot has risen the most out of that group compared to the other stratas. And the bottom has moved the least, although all boats have risen. It's because the first-time entry home buyer is squeezed with affordability, so the values just haven't risen quite as much. Now, again, it's market by market, because you can look at this chart and say, oh, good, then I can buy a nice colonial in Royal Oak, and it'll be competitive. And you make that bid, and you realize that offer asking price of $380, and you wind up having to buy it for $450 because everyone's overbid. So market by market is different, and I would say, in general, if you look at which markets are hot and which markets are not, it is the upper end markets in the metro area are the strongest consistently, and that goes across markets. So the upper end markets for first-time home buyers, so an upper end first-time home buyer buying into that market, which might be a Royal Oak or Birmingham, those values you'll see more overbidding, more activity than you will in a first-time home buyer in another market, maybe in a downriver or Macomb County. So it's all relative to the given market. But in general, things are settling and not quite as insane. So here's a visual of where things have been. And again, you can see Birmingham, Bloomfield, since 2019, home values have risen over 60%, 69%, Birmingham, Bloomfield, 64%. So those of you that are homeowners, you're really smiling right now. Your values have jumped just a little bit. Even in Clawson and Madison Heights, which is the lower price segment that we've grabbed here, is up 50%, which is wonderful if you are sitting quietly in your house. Not so fun if you're also looking to buy a house, because you're also buying a house that has also jumped that much as well. So those that are end, so they're just selling. They bought their other house, again, the classic baby boomer, and they're just a seller. They've got lots of smiles. But if you're also buying in the market, then you've got it. And that's where the cement shoes have been. It's just, my gosh, I can buy, but here's what I have to adjust to. So luckily for our industry, we have things like births, deaths, divorce, all those things that cause people to have to move. Nationally, typically 5 million homes have been sold across the country. That's the consistent number across the country. And anytime we get above 5 million over the last 30 years, we've paid a price. And just in 2021-22, we went up to 6.1 million for a couple of years, and you knew something was going to happen, and it did. The interest rates went up, we dropped down, and then we went down to 4 million, and we've been stuck at 4 million for the last 4 years. So what we did was we borrowed sales into 2021 and 22 from the future, and now we're giving those sales back. And it'll take a long time, just like it did in 2008. The recovery for 2008 was from really 2011 to 2017. So it was a 6-year recovery coming out of that. And we expect probably the same thing here. We're kind of at the bottom in terms of home sales. The unique thing about now versus 2008 is 2008, home sales dropped a lot, much as they did now, 30% or so, but so did home values. In this change of market, home sales dropped from peak 21 down to where they are now, about 20%, 25%, but values went up 50%, 60%. So as homeowners, we didn't feel that. We actually built wealth, so it is a different feel and different direction than it was then. And there's no, in terms of foreclosure issues and what's going on in the market, there's none of that right now. We're still at record low foreclosures and record low delinquencies. We're at record numbers of equity for homeowners. So there's nothing on the horizon that says that if there is any economic difficulties, the housing market will participate in that much at all. And typically, in a recession, if it isn't a housing-based recession, housing does pretty well. Most recessions, home values actually have held or gone up in recessions as long as it wasn't a housing recession, which was 2008. The saving loan crisis was, 90, 95 or something. Those were the last two housing-related recessions. So what do we think the market's going in the next 5 years or so? Well, as I've said, we think it'll be a steady improvement in the market. Inventories will rise. Boomers will eventually put their homes on the market. We joke that they're going to leave somehow. Maybe it'll be under a sheet, but they're going to leave their house eventually. And they'll release that inventory. Yeah, so when you see first-time home buyers, Gen Zs hanging around the funeral homes, you'll know what they're there for. But so we think that demographic flow and as I said earlier, the mountain of demographic interest, XYZ boomers, all of those looking to do something in the housing world is our superpower for the next 5 to 10 years in terms of housing health. And yes, it'll ebb and flow, and like we're in now, interest rates pop up, sales pull back for a few months, but the overall momentum of the market will keep things moving pretty steadily. Not as insane as it was 2002, 3, 4, or 20, 21, 22, but which is healthy because we don't want to see those. We don't want to see interest rates at 3%. As much as that sounds weird, we do not want to see that. We don't want to see appreciation rates at 6, 7, 8, 9%, because whenever that happens, you're giving it back sometime in the future. That's a borrowed business, so you want to keep it steady and flow, and that's where it's been. So we think that's going to happen over the next few years. The momentum demographically should show that going forward. So for buyers and sellers, if you're in the market now and you're those people, what should you be doing? From the buy side, it's a weird market, so you need to get yourself ready. You need to sort of like get ready and wait. You need to have completely underwritten, ready to go, get your cash if you're a cash buyer, get ready to go to compete, but understand that you're going to hurry up and wait, because you're going to have to wait for the inventory to rise. Also, half the market are properties that aren't getting multiple offers. They're the other half of the market. They may need a little bit of work, a little bit of love, and those are the opportunities for you. So it's this weird market where you're going to make an offer on one property that's 20% over ask, and then the next offer is going to be 15% under, just because of where those properties are in the market, their condition, all that. So that's a function of a weird changing market when it's changing directions. For sellers, I guess, and this goes for buyers too, and it goes for all of us, because we all have become addicted to chat or some sort of AI conversation. And on the real estate side, when as a buyer or seller you use chat to organize your thoughts, make sure you reach out to a trusted professional to confirm. As Ronald Reagan said, trust but verify, because the information isn't, in a lot of segments of how AI is working, the information isn't organized yet, and the real estate side is particularly true. So it gives great information, always compliments you on your wonderful question that you asked, and tells you how brilliant you are for asking it, and gives you lots of options. So just be careful of the rabbit holes, use a professional to confirm that. We've had a lot of transactions that have died because they've looked at the chat piece and chosen that professional to believe versus their own. So be careful of that. The market is acting weird, so understand that in terms of there'll be more fall throughs. You have an offer on your home, that's great. Understand that the likelihood that that will go to close is a little bit less now than it was a couple years ago. So having a couple backup offers isn't bad. And also the reality of because we're settling into a more balanced market, a bird in the hand philosophy is probably one you want to consider more often than, well, I don't worry about this offer because I've got 2 or 3 coming. Maybe, maybe not. So work with the one you've got, more and more of that, particularly if you're in the 50%, other 50%. And that's the other thing as a seller to understand, is be realistic as to where you sit. Are you the 50% of the market that is going to go quickly, that your home has been updated and renovated and you're going to get lots of offers? Or are you the other half? And that's a tough decision and a tough conversation to have with yourself. But there are 2 bifurcated markets in terms of the amount of activity that you're going to see on your property when you're selling them. And I guess also for both sides, be patient. Homes will take a little bit longer. So what happened to your neighbor 6 months ago is not necessarily what's going to happen to you in the marketplace. Things have settled down a little bit. Still strong, historically speaking, still a very strong active market, just a little slower than it has been, a little slower than we're used to. So that's a summary for the world.
Thank you.
So, thanks.
Thank you very much, Dan. Knowledge is power, and now to give us power in the commercial space, we're going to call on Todd Shimchak from Farbman Group. Todd graduated from the University of Michigan's College of Engineering with a long career in the automotive industry before turning into the real estate business. He'll let us know whether or not that was a good decision or not. Over the course of the last 20 years, he's developed a strong reputation for accurate valuations, for sellers seeking direction in their real estate holdings. Ted has extensive experience in dealing with distressed and stabilized properties. Ted does play pickleball. So I don't know if there's a correlation between knowledge and ability in the real estate space, but just remember, correlation does not equal causation. Ted lives in Rochester Hills. He's been nominated, you'll be happy to know, as Best Dog Dad for the last 16 years. On the board of the DAC Squash 200 plus bowler, DAC Beaver. Todd, tell us what we need to know.
Setting my timer here, 15 minutes. Shout out to my friend Ted in the audience. That's why I put the bowling stat in there, just to rub it in a little bit. That's how Ted and I met. And Ted, thank you for this stage. He heard I was speaking. He said, that guy's going to need a stage. They won't see him from the back. So thank you, Ted. Appreciate it. Yeah, where are we at here? That's AI, by the way. That was just a demonstration. I'm not that good looking. So what drives value? Like, I'm not going to go through and get in the weeds of all these formulas, but it's just to demonstrate. Everybody out here, or a lot of people are saying, oh, just interest rates go down, and great, we're going to be back, winning the race here in commercial real estate. But it's so much more complicated than that. There's so many more variables and considerations that go in there. So I was last year in 23, in April of 23, and now here in 26. So I thought it'd be fun to go back and look at like where we've been. So 10-year Treasury is up almost a point. 30-year Treasury is up more than a point. Oil is bouncing around 100 right now. I'm not sure why. Budget deficit is up another 300 billion. And some people might think that's bad, but it's super stimulative. Like, people hate on the budget, right? But like, if you get 300 billion more dollars of government that you're not paying for, where's that money flows through the economy somehow. Office occupancy, which is on everybody's mind, was running just under 50%. Now it's just over 50%, so it's still struggling. Unemployment rate's a bit higher. Metro Detroit apartment rent averages have gone up a little bit, and that's causing some distress because they haven't gone up as much as people wish they would. And we have two very different presidents, same in some ways. This was actually done in January, so before the war. Bloomberg Business Week was just commenting, this is the environment we're operating in. That's largely what's driving values down at the moment more than anything, is just the constant guessing every night before you go to bed and you wake up in the morning, what the hell's going to happen today? The other big hurdle we have is, bonds back in 2020 were pretty boring, and in 21 and 22, and a lot of these huge global wealth funds were driving money into private equity real estate investments. And now when they can go park their money at 5% without taking risk, you'd kind of be a fool to go buy, real estate, frankly. It's a very long-term bet, and you don't know what the world looks like. So I just park my money in 5% bonds and wait for the world to figure itself out. This has been the biggest change, is pretend and extend is dying. The last couple of years, the office market in particular, the banks, we do a lot of distress work. We do receiverships, and then we sell distressed real estate. And so many of those banks the last 2 to 3 years have been saying, oh, it'll get better. We can't sell yet. We don't want to take this loss. And in hindsight, they would have been better taking the losses 2 years ago, because they've only gotten worse, particularly in office. Everything else is kind of, not terrible, but office is just a different animal. And this is largely what's driving it. This was pre-COVID. Compared to pre-COVID, 100%, you'll see obviously debt down. But we've been stuck here since like 21, 22, right around 50%. And some of the worst markets aren't what you think. Actually, like Philadelphia is one of the worst markets. They have office occupancy around 30%, so pretty low. We are not struggling on delinquency on office much of the country is, ironically. Some of the best markets that were coming out of the great financial crisis, where everybody said, I'm going to run over there and park my money there because it's Denver, it's gorgeous, Chicago, Philadelphia, Atlanta, these hot markets. And you'll see here, delinquency rate in Denver is 35% of loans are not paying their bills right now. And in Detroit, we're only at 6.32%. Shout out to Dan Gilbert and Bedrock. They pay their bills no matter whether or not it makes sense. We do see some distress in the suburbs, in suburban office. We've been doing a lot more of our work out there, and not so much downtown Detroit. There's very few office towers in distress, again, because Gilbert just dominates the market. The other factor here, though, is honestly, it's just people got over their skis. They ran into those hot markets and they paid too much. They chased deals. They had a lot of private equity real estate funds just pumping money into those markets and saying, you know, I want to own in Denver. Here's an opportunity to buy in Denver, and I'm going to park my money there. Obviously, nobody knew what COVID was going to do to change the market, so it's not all their fault. But when you pay that much more, in coming out of the great financial crisis in Detroit, people were like, I'm not touching Detroit. I'm stupid if I buy in Detroit, right? And ironically, if they would have bought there, they probably would have had less problems. This is too hard to see, but you'll see there's just a smattering of large office buildings. But when you look through the package later, you can kind of see the different addresses, look them up. But here's the punchline. These are not rents. These are price per square foot of transactions. So buildings trading at, you know, what you would think are rental rates, you know, $14, $15, $20 a square foot. And these are largely because they're huge multi-tenant office buildings. If you have a 40,000 square foot single tenant building that's a user building, you can still get a real, you know, a decent price for that because you're likely going to sell it to a user. And the user will pay because they actually have a use for it, and they'll invest in it for themselves. A multi-tenant building, you're just gambling on, you know, if I put this much money into it, will they come? And so that's why it's become a basis game. We do all these fancy analysis of, you know, returns on investment and blah, 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 but it's really become a basis game, and people are just saying, they're walking through the building, they're saying, I'm gonna have to put $50 a square foot in TI on this. I'm gonna have to put a new, update the elevators, the roof, et cetera, et cetera. I'm gonna be in this for $70 a square foot before I even find out if a tenant will show up after I do all that work. So they're saying, if I'm in it for 70 and fixing this up, I gotta pay 15 for this, my basis is 85, and that's as simple as the math is right now on office buildings. It's not complicated. And this article was just in the last week or two, and this goes back to what I was saying. This is not just our problem, this is everybody's problem, that the banks, the synopsis of that article is the banks have finally gotten past, survived through 25, they got to 26, and they're like, shit, it's still not changing. We need to just move. And so now we're getting so many calls. We're selling a bunch of deals under contract we have today. Our deals we started doing brokers' opinions of value on 2-3 years ago. And they just kept kicking the can. And now they're finally saying, just go. And on some recent transactions, like we went out to market and we thought, okay, they wanted $40 a square foot. And the offers are coming in at $20, $25 a square foot. And it's still, even at that point, they're still in a state of disbelief, and it takes them a couple weeks to just sit on offers and stew on it and hope that something else comes in, and it doesn't, and they finally say, fine, just go. So that's what's happening finally now. So on the other end of the spectrum, there are some new builds going on. You know, these are some examples from around town. Downtown Utica is a deal I'm working on, $35 a square foot, Class A office, walkable. This one you might see, it was where the former Chinese restaurant was in Birmingham that got torn down. And that's going up $60 a square foot. It's gonna have apartments on the top, retail on the bottom, 2 floors of office in the middle, $60 a square foot. Which in Detroit area, that sounds expensive, but I can tell you on bigger cities, that's cheap. So I think they'll get it. They just have to wait for the right tenant that appreciates the location. And then this is at Telegraph and Maple. It's kind of walkable. You can walk over to Equinox. You can you're just crossing big roads. So it's not like you're downtown walkable, but you just play the lights. And why do you do this? Because you want young, sexy people to show up to work. Like, they don't want to go to work in their dad's places, right? They want some young, sexy space. So we really don't have much Class A plus around here. Like, the Hudson building is really the only what I would say is Class A plus. So this is why you see why you would do it. That A plus occupancy is around 70% on a nationwide basis. Whereas everything else, if you take everything, it's 50%. So if you take out the A plus, the old stuff is way less than 50%. So that's why you still want to build a new office building, is if you really appreciate people coming to the office and that's what you want, then you need nice space. And this is doesn't apply to us, but Manhattan, you can see like their Class A inventory is getting tight. So in the same stories in San Francisco, both cities, people love to poo-poo on and say, oh, they're screwed, and it's like, they're coming back better than anybody in the country on their leasing markets. Retail update real quick. Detroit's doing fine, 10% delinquency, but you know, with retail, it's always just a, you know, for lack of a better term, it's fashion, right? Like, it's experiences and fashion that drive retail vibrancy, and there's always going to be some bankruptcies. This is probably heavily skewed by, we had Rite Aid go out, We had Walgreens get purchased by private equity, and they're masters at destroying value. So they will, over time, we'll see more Walgreens enter the market, and we've sold some of these. They're being sold largely for either gas stations or somewhat medical uses. I'd call it medtail. That's a trend that we're starting to see. So it could be in tougher areas, might be plasma centers. In other areas, it could be substance abuse recovery we've sold to. It could be just urgent care. So a variety of things. I suspect some will be Aldi's or, Trader Joe's too. And this is a big trend I just want to talk about for a minute. In so much of what's happening in retail and where that's recovering, we used to see shopping malls being torn down and converted to either a massive redevelopment or Amazon warehouses, right? So like now nobody's going to the store, rarely go to the store to buy home goods and clothes, much less so at least, much less volume. You're getting most of that stuff online. So what is inline retail converting to? Fitness and wellness and medical uses is going to be a new trend that we're going to start to see. So I just looked at the Rochester area just for reference because I'm most familiar with it, and there's been so many big fitness uses there. So you have Lifetime, 165,000 square foot. That was an old tennis club. That's an exception. But we have Edge Fitness, was in a former Kmart, 30,000 square feet, part of it. Crunch Fitness is coming soon in a former Joann's. Planet Fitness was a former hardware store. Retro Fitness, that was built from ground up. Greystone Pickleball Club, which is an amazing place up in Pontiac, Auburn Hills, built from ground up. But then and then former Carson's out in Macomb, that's like the world's biggest powerhouse gym at 120,000 square feet. So they took a former department store. So this is just a trend we're seeing to absorb that retail. So when I say retail is okay, it's not yesterday's retail. It's retail property is okay, but it's no longer, what we think of as retail. And then there's all these little niche things popping up, these concepts. Orange Theory, F45, Club Pilates. Do we have any members of Peach Lab here? I'm asking for a friend. I didn't even know this was a concept until I started doing this research. And it's basically a highly focused gym to build a juicy booty. So I think Butt Lab probably did not when testing. They said, let's go with Beach Lab. So I think we're launching the guys version of that soon called Butt Lab. That'll be, Ted and I are going to invest in that. So anyway, and what a statement of light of what a privileged country and area we live in when you can have a fitness concept that's only focused on your butt. That's limits. So there's going to be more of these concepts coming along, and it's getting super bougie too. Like the gym, like Equinox, kind of a pioneer in making the gym super bougie and less utilitarian, and now everybody's going that direction. You see any of these newer gyms that are being built up, and it's dark floors, dark ceilings. Utica has a place called Wolf Gym that's in that. It's really like just dark and moody and just sexy vibes. And then like this one, this is not an area, Bath and Racket House, Glenn's Longevity. I would encourage you to Google Tampa Bath and Racket, and you won't believe it. Like the starting membership of this place, if you're under 40, is $25,000. If you're 40 and up, it's $45,000. And then if you get like the premier level, it's $95,000. So like this is where like that's obviously appeals to a certain wealthy crowd. But my point is like health is wealth. I think this generation, Gen X and behind, have really leaned into that. And we see all these bathhouses. Bathhouses is another whole concept. So now we're getting into this. Bass was a pioneer in Detroit, which is a sauna and cold plunge place. This one launched out by Island View in Detroit. This is a bathhouse in New York City. So how gorgeous is that? Like these places are getting super upscale and bougie, and it's more so to my theory. When I was here in 23, I went back and looked at my presentation, and I had data on cell phone data of where people are going in retail, and it was heavily skewed. Like there was a big upsurge in going to fitness concepts and going to the gym coming out of COVID in 23. And to me, that's part of like, hey, let's get healthy. But I think also what that's part of is connections, because a lot of people are struggling with connections out here. And I'm on the board at the DAC, and we have these meet the members, meet new candidates meetings every other Tuesday. And so many people are now natively remote in their jobs, and they are just struggling working at home, and they need connections. And I think this is a big answer to it. It's not just going to the gym to go to the gym, it's going to the gym to meet people and getting out of the house. And I think saunas and the spa experience, a social spa, if you will, is even better than a gym, because in the gym everybody's got headphones on and you're not supposed to talk to girls, and it's really, guys are afraid, no, it's the thing, right? Guys are afraid to walk up to a girl, you're gonna be a creep. So but here, if you go and you're taking your clothes off, you want to be talked to. If you're not talked to, I mean, honestly, if you're not being talked to, you're probably there like, what's wrong with you? And that's this guy, right? Like, the girls are talking, this guy's over here going like, I don't know if I'm supposed to do it here. I don't know if I'm supposed to. So, and this is a cool thing too. This is in London. So, like the big rave parties with the pumping electronic music, blah, 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 that's going on. They've created like intense fitness thing where you go for like hours and you listen to electronic music and you're like doing these fitness challenges at the same time. It's like, that's pretty freaking cool. And they have a bunch of these sober ones too, where it's like, the newer generation doesn't drink so much, so they're like, hey, let's just get together and dance and work out together instead of like drinking. This is amazing. I don't have a child, but I'd love to borrow one. If I can go there, just so I don't look like a creep going in there without a kid, because I really want to try this. This is just open in Troy. So this is just like, the kids even get it now. They want to touch grass. That's the thing the kids say, right? Like, touch grass. So like, they're going out there and launching in Troy, which looks awesome. Industrial, real quick, I'm running out of time, but so industrial's doing great, very little delinquency. There's obviously some turbulence in the auto market and industrial, so keep posted. There's alternative uses coming out of the government currently for industrial facilities. They're overpaying. They obviously didn't have a buyer's broker involved because they just paid overpriced. Data centers are a big thing, and that's on everybody's mind. This article got into the idea of that there's increasing demand for compute, which you need to build these warehouses for, but everything's getting more efficient. There's a lot more to that, in my opinion, what's going on. I think compute is just going to continue to climb exponentially, and they are going to find efficiencies, but a lot of it is just a bottleneck based on power and supplies, like everything that goes into these centers. They're having a hard time keeping up with the demand. So I think they're going to keep talking about that. Multifamily, very low distress. One stress point about building new, which we need more of though, is taxes. And I put this chart in there, you guys can digest later, that just shows like a per unit tax per year. If you build in Birmingham, you're at like $9,000 a unit in taxes. So like that gets passed on to tenants. Obviously your rents have to be so elevated. Auburn Hill's a little cheaper, Troy, West Bloomfield, a little, somewhere in the middle. So continuing on, big thing for me is just demographics. You'll see here, like the job market is being really propped up and supported by healthcare spending on every level, less so on other things. This is something that we should all be worried about and concerned about, and I don't know how to fix it because it's already too late, but this is like the birth-death model for Michigan. You'll see this is the aging trend between now and 2050, and you'll see the retirement age, that cluster is growing, working age is barely growing, and the next generation, so all of you that did have kids, thank you, please keep going. And we're losing that population. This again for you guys to digest later, and this is where that demographic drop-off happens, and that's where it's scary for, say, like student housing. Like, do not buy anything in small college towns. Like, if you can buy in East Lansing or Ann Arbor, you're going to be fine. Outside of that, I would not own anything in any small college town. So these are just kind of like where people are in their lives. And when it comes to residential, my theory is like if you're going to sell in the next 5 years, because these people are 35. To me, that's like where 35 to 40 is kind of like peak buying years for me. I don't know if Dan, if you agree. Dan, you didn't want to hear it. They are, but like after you've kind of settled in by your 40s, right? And so like after that, there's like this big drop off. And my theory is both apartments and single-family homes may start struggling at that point, because then you also have this kicking in. This is the end of the boomers are like 65 right now. So like as everybody there approaches 80, then you're really starting to be forced to make changes, right? So like they're going to sell out of their homes the next 5 years or so, and then that can be absorbed right now. But then what happens after that? If more boomers need to keep selling after that, I think it's going to soften. So what does that mean for commercial real estate? Again, senior living of different varieties. It's not going to look like grandma's senior living. I think it's going to be much more active. We don't have a lot of that product here yet, but it's happening in other parts of the country. Think like Margaritaville. there's literally Margaritaville retirement communities, and think like that kind of like active, energetic lifestyle for seniors will be the thing we'll see. Medical office and medical uses of all kinds, more medical and retail, wellness is going to keep going, but again, like multifamily and student, I'm nervous about that down the road. Again, going back to that birth-death model here, what we think we're going to see in Michigan, you'll see those out parts of the state, I think, are really, really going to struggle. Going forward, the strong get stronger, Oakland, Wayne, Macomb areas, and then, Grand Rapids, Traverse City area, those areas will be okay, but for those other parts of the state, it's going to be kind of a bloodbath. So, that was about it.
So I know that we've flooded you guys with a lot of information. As I think Dan mentioned, so we are going to be sending out the PowerPoint presentation to everyone who registered for this morning. In addition to that, thank you to Bloomfield Community Television, which is recording this morning's program. We'll also send out a link for that, so if you want to share it with some of your colleagues who weren't able to make it this morning but you think would benefit from the information, we'll give that to you as well. Before we close today, just by quick show of hands, how many folks this morning are attending your very first chamber event? Wow, welcome. Thank you so much for coming. If you like what you saw this morning, check out the chamber. We're almost at capacity for membership, but I think we can fit a few more businesses, so please feel free to reach out to Ellen and Annie and Kelly and myself, and we'll let you know more about the chamber. For the first time people attending, we always want somebody to leave with something they didn't come with, so at every chamber event or program, we always have a giveaway. These giveaways are donated by our member businesses. It's a great way for you to advertise your business. If you have a product or service that would lend itself to a giveaway, let us know and we'll put you in the rotation. This morning we actually have two unbelievable gift baskets, courtesy of Dan Fisher and his team at Citizen State Bank. Thank you so much, Dan, for giving these to us this morning. And Mark Weberly, if I could have you join me, please. Mark is with Citizen State Bank. He's also on the board of directors of the chamber and a new member of our executive committee. So Mark, I'm going to have you draw two names for our lucky winners. And by the way, I really like your ensemble this morning. So
We coordinated, right, Joe?
we may have texted yesterday afternoon. So
All about the hair, Joe.
all right, first one.
Paula Ray.
There you go. One more.
Come on, Paula, let's go. We got business to do.
Come on.
Kristen Tucker. Kristen Tucker.
Kristen's here.
Come on, Kristen.
Thank you. And I also want to mention that on everybody's table, you have a couple of things to put in your calendars. Number one, for those of you who don't know, the Chamber sponsors the Village Fair, which is the carnival in downtown Birmingham, every summer in Shane Park. Begins in 6 weeks, believe it or not. That's terrifying. May 28th through May 31st. So bring your kids, grandkids, and friends to the fair. And then also Tuesday, September 15th, is our annual Wine and Dine event. If you like great food, if you like great beverages, come and visit us. It's always at the Kingsley Inn in Bloomfield. So put those in your calendar. With that, again, this concludes our forecast series for 2026. We want to thank everybody for coming this morning and for supporting the series. And hopefully we'll see you all at a chamber event soon. Thank you. Thank you.